Hey y'all, on this episode of Outdoor Stories, we're going to teach you how to do a European skull mount. Stay tuned. Before we get started, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a tip. If this is something you really wanted to do as a European skull mount to your deer head, your best bet is to get on it as soon as you can. Don't wait around a week or two or whatever, because the thing will start to decay, the eyes will start to sink in, it can get real ripe, pungent, almost putrid smelling. It's a really disgusting job to do it right away, let alone give it time to rot. I mean, that thing, it can be horrible, and you better pray you got a strong stomach. If I can't get to it right away, one of the things I like to do is I'll double bag it in a big like hefty bag, trash bag, and tie a knot in it and put it in the freezer until I can get to it. That way it's not so bad to work with. You just have to give it about a day or so to unthaw. These are some of the tools and the products that you're going to need in order to do this job. You're definitely going to need a few sharp knives for defleshing and taking the skin off the face. X-Acto knife or razor blades work great too for the scraping process. We have these here and the knife here. You're going to need a couple different types of pliers, regular pliers, needle nose, hemostats. The longer the better. You're going to need that to get up into the sinus cavities and get out all the material and stuff that's in there. Dental pick, you're definitely going to need that for picking the little hard to reach spots to get everything out of there. You got your wire brushes, you're definitely going to need that for the scraping process. You're going to need plastic wrap in order to do the bases of the antlers and part of the antlers, so you don't take any of the color or the tree bark or anything off of the antlers when you're doing the boiling process. As part of the bleaching process, you're going to need paint brushes and paper towel. I'll show you how to use those later in the video. You're also going to need yourself a clothes hanger, and I don't have it out here, but a long flathead screwdriver, skinny one, because after the boiling process you need to get the brain out of the back of the skull, and there's a tiny little hole. I'll show you how to do that later on in the video. And we also have the big pan here. That's also for the bleaching process. They call it a bleaching process, but it's really not. Do not use bleach. Whatever you do, use peroxide. You want the thing to last your lifetime. If you use bleach, it ends up getting real brittle. You end up with bone fragments coming off, teeth falling out, so on and so on. Okay, now one of the first things you want to do, your very first cut, is get you a real sharp knife or a razor blade and run that knife from the tip all the way down through the back of the head. And then you can start peeling it apart, working on it like that, a little bit of time, kind of like skinning your deer. Make the first cut right now. Out of this cut, you can open it up like that. Cut. Just a little bit at a time. Helps when your knife is sharp. Break out the razor knife and give that a try. Get up here, you can cut all the fur the best you can all the way around the antler and around the back, and I'll get to that other part later on how to get that clean up underneath. Now once you get it to this point, so I've got it all peeled back. I got it all peeled back all the way just about up underneath the antlers here. Make sure that's all cut around there. And I got it peeled all the way back. Back of the skull to the ears. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the ears off, and all this extra skin flap here, all this is going to come off. We're going to be left with a little bit of fur and stuff around the base of the antlers. We'll get to cutting that off right now. This one was pretty gross. My uncle shot this one, it's a couple of weeks now. It's been a couple of weeks, and this eye had a real bad infection and he got gored while fighting. Needless to say, this thing is pretty ripe. Get to cutting that ear off. Make sure you get as much of the meat off the cheeks and everything as you possibly can before the next step. Alright, we got it down to most of the meat and stuff is off the skull. Got everything around the base of the antlers except for this little bit of stuff. We're going to send it through a boil first and then pick this stuff out with a little razor blade or a knife, whatever works. Be careful. Definitely got to be careful with the snout. The bone in the snout is really, really fragile. You definitely don't want to break that. I'll talk about that a little later on in the video. You get the cartilage that's in the end of the snout. Put your knife going. Cut that out too. Like I said, be be very mindful of that snout. And let's see what we got left. Only thing left now is to take the eyeballs out. It's a pretty disgusting job, actually. I never liked that. Just something about them, I don't know, always looking at me, I guess. But anyways, take the eyeballs out. What you're going to use for that, really sharp knife, razor blade, even maybe some kind of scissors, because once you get a hold of that eyeball, you're going to want to use like needle nose. I like a needle nose, pair of pliers, or hemostats to get a hold of that eyeball and cut out around it. Cut out around the eyeball, get a hold of it, start pulling it out, and that root that's on the back of the eyeball that's holding it in, you want to cut that out before the boil. You want to cut that root off and get rid of the eye. That root can stay in there until after the first boil. There we go. We got everything picked off it as good as we're going to get it until we do the first boil, which we're getting ready to do that. I took the eyeballs out, did that off camera so you guys didn't have to see that. Pretty gross. But anyways, a little bit of fur and stuff around here, around the bases is okay. We can get to that later. But let's get this thing in the pot and get to boiling. Right before the boiling process, we're going to take some saran wrap, plastic wrap, and wrap the base of the antlers all the way up past the brow tines. And what that does is, see how it's real nice and white on the tips, and down here it's got tree bark and some brown in there. What you want to do is wrap it up, and it keeps everything together. It keeps it from discoloring, and it keeps all the tree bark and everything in place while you're boiling it. We'll wrap them beams up. We've got the bases and everything all wrapped up. Now we're ready for the boil. Now once you got your pot hot with the water, you don't want to fill it up too high because you don't want to overflow it when you're putting your deer head in. But when you get the pot hot, what you want to do is you don't want a big roaring boil, just a small little simmer, a few little bubbles like you see you got going on in there. And take a little bit of dish soap, put some dish soap in that water, and that dish soap acts as a degreaser. And when you do the first boil, it cuts down on the grease on the head and everything, and it's not so slimy. I'm going to add the dish soap to the water. And if you want, pour a little bit on the deer's head, directly onto the skull, and that really cuts down on the grease. Now we're going to put that deer head in the water. Yeah, we're going to have to add some more water to this pot. What you want to do is submerge it right up to like the base of the antlers. I just filled the water level back up to where it should be. I'm going to show you what it looks like. You want to get the water just above the top of the skull, and it's okay if you do submerge the antlers a little bit. Like I said, they are wrapped up to protect them. But we'll let that boil. Like I said, a slow boil, not a big roaring boil. And we're going to leave that on the stove there for about, I'm thinking about 2 hours for the first boil. And we'll get to scraping it and cleaning the skull after that and see where we're at. Well, it's been about 2 hours since we started boiling the deer head. We're going to pull it out of the water, check it, and begin the scraping process. Let that water drain out real good. Well, we got our deer head back to the garage, getting ready to start the scraping process. Let's get the camera on there. Show you a little bit about what to do here. You see everything starting to peel off. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the plastic off the antlers. We'll unwrap it. And now we're going to get to doing a little bit of scraping. We're going to grab the wire brush here, and you can see all the stuff left over that's still on the skull. Wire brush takes that stuff right off real fast. Grab your knife, cut off some of this extra stuff off here, part of the lips and part of the snout that was left over, the cartilage. Get to the section here, you can take the bottom jaw here, give it a pull. I mean, there's some meat and stuff still hanging on to it, but pull that out. Let's cut this stuff off real quick. Because that bone goes all the way up in here, up underneath this piece here. See? You got to get that out. Pliers come in handy. It's still a little hot from the water. Give it that pull, and that bone comes right out. See it? Now you got excess stuff like the roof of the mouth. Definitely want to get rid of that. Get that out the way. Get scrubbing. It takes the meat and stuff off with the wire brush. You're gonna have to do some razor blade work too. A lot of scraping. Got to put time in to get it all clean. Now when you get to the back of the skull at the bottom, you got all kinds of meat and stuff in here you got to pick out and dig out around this last vertebrae that's stuck in the back of the head. You're going to want to get that out. Just cut all the stuff that's holding it on. Give it a little pull. But like I said, be careful of the nose. Very, very fragile. Yeah, it's a long, tedious process for sure. Next part I want to address is the fur and stuff up underneath the antlers, underneath the bases. We're going to do that with a razor blade. Just cut right up to the base, and then you can peel it. See, just like that. Peel it. Alright, we got it scraped down quite a bit. What we're going to do now is we're going to work on the ear holes, the little tiny ear holes right there. You can pull them out with needle nose pliers or a pair of hemostats, either one. Stick the tip in the hole like that and get a good bite on it. You're going to hear a snap and a crack when you pull it, just like that. You want to get all that out of there, because if you don't, that thing will stink later down the road, and you want to be able to put it in the house. The rest of the stuff in here we'll dig out with a dental pick, like so. See how easy that pulls out there? Just a lot of picking. Let's get the other side. Next thing we're going to do is start working on this sinus cavity and get the crap that's in there out with the hemostats. The longer the better, because you can reach right up in there and pull the stuff out. Now on your skull, you're going to want to use your dental pick to get in these tiny little crevices, like right in here, to get all the crap and stuff out of there. And every kind of little hole, like this one, the ones on the tops of the head, where that root that connects to the back of the eyeball comes into the skull on the inside there, you want to pick that hole out clean as possible. Every nook and cranny with the dental pick, for sure. Now we're going to take this skull outside and we're going to pick away at the brain matter. What you're going to need for that is a clothes hanger, real skinny flathead screwdriver. Well, we're outside. We're going to take this skull and get the brain matter out the back. What you're going to need for this is long flathead screwdriver, wire coat hanger if you got. It takes a little bit of picking and flicking basically to get the stuff out. Once you get it as clean as you can, take your garden hose and shoot it in the back of that hole where the vertebrae connects. I'll show you that hole real quick. That little tiny hole right there is where the brain matter is. You got to dig all that out. We'll get started on that right now. Take a screwdriver, stick it in there, spin it around a few times, smash it up real good. Makes almost like a, reminds me of tapioca pudding, only grosser. Take your coat hanger and cut you off a piece. I'm gonna put that down a second. Cut you off a piece. Wire cutters if you got. Let me show you what to do here. Once you get it separated, I kind of like to snip the end off with the wire cutters. Get that straightened out a little bit. You take the one end, give it a little bit of a bend to it. Kind of acts as your pooper scooper when you're inside there. Make it as small as you can though, because you don't want it to get caught inside that skull. There you go. Got all nice and set up. And like I say, you jam that down the back of the hole in the head, and it helps get the brain matter out. Like I said, it's a little bit of a job. It can be tedious because you're only getting a little bit at a time. Unless you get lucky like that and get it all in one big pull. That's another reason I like to boil them first before I get the brain out. Some people like to try to dig that brain out before the first boil, but that's a good reason why to do it, because you know kind of cooks it and you can pull it right out pretty easy. We're gonna take that garden hose and we're gonna shoot some water down there so we can wash a bunch of that out. Let me turn the hose on. Like I said, shoot that water right down the back of that hole. Try and do it away from the cameras. Don't want to get the equipment wet. We spin the other way. Now once you get the brain and everything out, this is a step I like to do, is I like to put a second boil on it. And the reason being is when you leave it out of that hot water, the stuff that's stuck on the skull starts to harden up and it gets harder to pick off with that dental pick. And that's why I run it through a second boil, but I don't do it too long. Maybe 15 minutes tops. It helps loosen it up real good. Like all this junk and stuff that's on the back of this skull, all that cartilage, want to get that softened back up, makes it easier to get out with the dental pick. And once we get all that done, I'll show you the next process, which is the bleaching process. We're back in the garage getting ready to do the bleaching process. After the thing has been scraped and picked clean, there's nothing left on it and everything's out of the sinus cavities and every little hole, what you're going to want to do is get you a big old pan, like a roasting pan or something like that. I'll show you what I'm using here in a second. And that's what you're going to want to do the bleaching process in. Once you get your pan, you take your skull and put it inside the pan. That way it collects all the runoff and stuff that you're going to get when you use the peroxide. Let's get this open real quick. I usually like to pour it directly on the skull. Don't splash it, whatever you do, all over the antlers or anything like that. A little bit at a time. It starts eating anything that's left away or left on there off. I like to take a little paintbrush and get it real wet, and it can help you get into little sinus cavities, little nooks and crannies and stuff. Get that in there real good. You can also use a gel that you can get from like a beauty supply store, but I don't frequent the beauty supply stores too often, so we're using regular peroxide. So you repeat this process a few times to get it to the color white that you'd like. The more you add, or each coat that you add after you let it dry some and add another coat, each coat gets whiter and whiter. Get it real good. I also like to take the bottle and turn the head up a little bit and run it down the sinus cavities, just to eat up anything else that might have got away from you and is left in there, but usually ain't if you do a good job. You can take a paper towel also, soak the paper towel real good, and you can lay the paper towel over top of the skull and let it sit on there a little while, and that helps brighten it up some too. But I'm going to finish this up. When I get it done, I'll turn the camera back on for the second coat and show you where we're at. I'm going to show you the trick that I do with the paper towel. Give me a little piece folded up like that. Stick it between the antlers and up underneath it. Lay it across, kind of keep it down, tucked up underneath there. Another piece. Just drape it over top. Another piece. Cover as much of the skull as you can. Then take your peroxide and pour it onto the paper towel. Gets real good and wet. Remember, try not to splash it all over the antlers. Once it's good and sopping wet, make sure it's making contact with the skull everywhere possible. And then you can walk away from it and leave it for, I'd like to maybe come back and mess with it in about 45 minutes. And peel the paper towel off and see where I'm at, if I want to add a second coat or not. I usually do, sometimes 3. It depends on how bright I'd like it. Well, it's been about a half an hour, a little longer than that. Wanted to see what it's starting to look like here. Let's peel this stuff off. Getting there. Still need to do some brushing to the top. As you can see, it's getting pretty white. Get a little bit better shot for you. Yep, like I said, you just keep brushing it on till you get it to the whiteness that you'd like. Still gonna add another coat here. Maybe one more. We'll see how it turns out. We're gonna add this coat and come back and mess with it again in about a half an hour, and we'll see where we're at. Well, everything turned out nice. I don't have to do any more to the bleaching process. I come out to the garage and checked on the skull, and it's a real bright white like I wanted. Let me show it to you real quick. Pretty chilly out here. It's in the 30-degree range. The inside of this little part right here is still a little wet. I think it's because it's cold. I did this last year, and when I brought it into the house the next day, it was real bright bone white. But I wanted to talk to you about the bases on the antlers. During the boiling process, if you don't have it wrapped up real tight, you can lose some of the color and stuff to it. Highly recommend getting Minwax Golden Oak Wood Stain, and you can color the bases of the antlers with that and bring back the color. For the video ends, I wanted to show you about the snout. It's got all the little cracks and stuff in there on both sides. It's real fragile. If you bump it and knock it off by chance, you could actually glue the thing back on with a little bit of super glue. Just don't put a bunch of it on there and make it look all lumpy and clumpy. I hope this video and these tips help you out. I appreciate you guys watching a bunch. Don't forget to hit your like and your subscribe button. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. Until next time, this is Outdoor Stories Television. The rut is here, so why don't you use the best? Nature's best. The name says it all. If you like Michigan and the outdoors, check out Michigan Outdoors Report on Facebook. For all your feed, grain, and hunting needs, go see Tom at Farmers Grain and Feed Mill in New Boston, Michigan. 734-753-4233. And tell him Dennis sent you.